Kitsune and Remnant by Red Devil 360, Chapter 2, Arrival. Naruto let out a groan of relief as he stepped off the bulkhead and onto the landing platform in front of Beacon. It had been a long journey to and from the Yen and Remnant. The elemental nations were directly due west of Vacuo, but the ocean was so big between them that it took nearly 5 weeks to cross. It was mainly the reason why they hadn't discovered each other until recently. The journey was just too arduous on a normal occasion, but say if you were going to war, it was a rather boring journey, but it wasn't spent doing nothing. Aspen helped Naruto in cleaning up his remnant, and in return, taught him a little ninjutsu to help him get along. Also, Naruto shared with him the history of the elemental nations up to the war, of course, when Aspen began filling him in on the four academies and their respective kingdoms. On a particular slow day, Naruto started playing shogi with himself. When Aspen inquired about it, as it was similar to chess in a way, Naruto taught him, and after he got the hang of it, was taught chess. 'Cause why not? Naruto rolled his shoulders as he looked towards the empty courtyard in front of him, and coincidentally at Beacon itself. It was definitely a pretty place, and Beacon itself looked to be the epitome of majestousness. That fact was unavoidable. However, nothing else stood out to him, a symptom of taking part in a war, he supposed. He had immediately spotted 7 different weak points in the building and 9 points that were a strategic cock-up. It was definitely not meant for battle, that much was clear. It was a school for children. Like it? Ospen spoke up from behind him, a mug of coffee in his hand. Naruto didn't know where he got that from, as they had been together for the past 5 weeks, and never seen him get one. Naruto ignored that, however, and shrugged. Pros and cons, he answered simply. Where is everyone? He asked after noticing a severe lack of people. Not here yet. The semester doesn't start for another week. I thought it would be prompt for you to get used to the area and meet the other staff before the students arrive. Besides, I have a proposition for you, the professor explained before heading towards Beacon. Come, I shall give you a tour. After a long but helpful tour, the two retreated to Ospen's office at the topmost floor. Naruto glanced around at the clockwork above the room, but made no comment about it. Ospen went to a table off to the side and refilled his cup of coffee before filling another that was on the side. Taking both, he handed one to Naruto and walked over to his desk and sat down. Leaning his cane against the woodwork, Naruto glanced at the admittedly nice view out the window and sat down in front of him. So, what is this proposition you have? Naruto asked. Ospen looked at the screen in front of him. Naruto decided not to question the fact that it was floating. For my proposition, or two rather, I want you to teach, he said simply. Now was Naruto's turn to be stumped. You do realize that we were at war, right? Why would you want me to teach? Never mind, come here, Naruto asked. Because I want peace, Ospen answered. Something big is coming, and I fear doing it alone we would never overcome it, but with the end's help, he trailed off. His tone was serious. Naruto narrowed his eyes and leaned forward in his chair. Big? Like what? Ospen hesitated only for a moment, but Naruto still caught it. I don't know. Naruto kept his narrowed eyes on the man, but said nothing. He was lying, that much was for sure. About what he didn't know, but he at least seemed sincere about wanting to prevent it from happening. Naruto sat back. What would you like me to teach? He inquired eventually. I found that the history in the elemental nations is rather rich, even more so when you were personally telling me. I was hoping that you could run a lesson on the history of your home continent. It may serve to evaporate some of the tension, and also, if you're willing, you could teach the students some basic hand-to-hand as an extracurricular activity they could take up. It will, however, be up to them to attend. Ospen explained. The idea had merit, definitely. There was nothing really harmful in the history of books from the academy, and he could teach some taijutsu that civilians could learn. One problem, however. Why would they ever listen to me? I hate to bring this up again, but hell, we were at war 5 months ago, he reminded. They will listen to you, Ospen reassured. Naruto raised a brow. How? For one thing, it'll help them survive. Two, he took a sip of his coffee. I'm making it 20% of their final grade. He smirked almost evenly. Naruto smiled, not that you could see it, and sighed. Very well, Aspen, I accept. Is there anything else? Just one. He reached underneath his desk and Naruto heard a drawer open and close. He placed the strange device on the desk in front of him. This will be your personal scroll. No, it isn't, Naruto interrupted. What do you mean? Aspen asked. Naruto reached through his belt and put one of his scrolls on the desk. This is a scroll. That is a block of plastic and glass. Aspen was admittedly rather perplexed. In all his years, this had never happened before. Right, I see the problem. Since our scrolls run on electricity, you can just call them e-scrolls if you like. Not to replace the scroll, that's fine with me. Now how do I use it? He questioned after poking said device a few times with no success. Have you used the computer before? Once or twice. They're not very common in shinobi villages, despite the changing times, Naruto answered. Aspen nodded. It's much like that, just on a smaller scale. This one has been personalized just for you, so only you can use it. I had the text added in the Ninshu language after much trouble for your added benefit, as I know you still have a little trouble with reading and writing Remnant. He explained with a friendly smile. Naruto sat atop on one of the many roofs that Beacon had. He liked high places, though most shinobi do. Strategic strength, you see, but he had a particular affinity to them. He supposed it was due to his wind affinity, but he never bothered to look into it. It had been a rather slow week. All he had to really do was research, practice his remnant, and meet the school staff, most of which were openly hostile to him. The others were at least cordial enough to hold a conversation without threatening to kill him, not that he expected much. That Glinda scared him slightly, however, reminding him too much of Bachan. He dreaded to think what would happen if those two teamed up. A shiver went unconsciously down his spine. It was late in the night now, and it was only a matter of time until the students arrived in the afternoon the following day. He wasn't looking forward to it, if he was honest. Teaching wasn't really his forte. Killing, on the other hand, Naruto put away the kunai he had unconsciously been spinning in his hand. He really needed to stop doing that. It hadn't been entirely useless. On the other hand, Ospen, ever a good host, had taken him to the Emerald Forest a few times to fight Grim. He was thoroughly disappointed in the end. After a lifetime of fighting and killing other human beings that could think intelligently, fighting something that could barely fight outside of swing wildly and hope to hit something was a bit of a downer. Of course, he had done his research. They were stronger ones, but those were few and far between. He was rather confused at why these people from Remnant thought that they were such a big threat, but he was not them. His e-scroll chirped in his pocket, signaling that it had received the message. He fished it out and switched it on. Now, having got used to the concept of handheld computers, he quickly filtered through and selected the message. Apparently, the professor wanted to see him. Something had come up regarding his position at the school. That worried him slightly. Had communication broken down and both sides were fighting again? No, he would have received a message from the Toads if that had happened. Had they decided he wasn't welcomed anymore? Honestly, he wasn't sure what he was getting so worked up on. So with that done, slipping the device back into his pocket, he leaned forward from his perch on the roof. Sliding off and downwards, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves before he even got halfway. Naruto stepped through the window of Ozpin's office, ignoring the wooded glare from Glinda, and sat before the desk. Ozpin, who over the course of the week got used to the fact that shinobi rarely used doors, was hardly fazed and spoke immediately. Thank you for arriving so promptly, Kitsune. I'm afraid something has come up, Ozpin began. Oh, like what? Naruto inquired. Due to a rather late enrollment from a student, we now have an odd number of students. Okay. Aspen took a sip of the coffee he had. It is my hope that you will be joining the initiation with the other students and hopefully forming a pair to complete a team. He spoke in between sips. That would explain the fact that Glinda was trying to make him combust with her eyes. You do realize that this is a recipe for disaster, right? Naruto pointed out. I am aware. Naruto was stumped. He really didn't care. And should the other initiates prove hostile to myself? Naruto questioned. Then you would be allowed to retaliate as any other, Ospen explained. He sat in his chair for a little while, just thinking on it. Very well. I would assume, since that I would technically be a student here, that I would have to share accommodation with my new team. You would be correct. It helps create bonds between teammates, so you would be required to partake in that. Naruto sighed, but did not protest. He had no power here. He was more of a representative with diplomatic immunity. Is that all? After receiving a nod, Naruto disappeared through the window he came through. It was at that time Glinda snapped. Ospin, are you actually senile? She yelled the moment Naruto's form vanished. Sid Man calmly took a sip of his tea. No. Glinda seemed back by the simple answer. Then why? She growled. For all we know, he could be planning to bring down the entire kingdom, and you just let him onto a team of children. Children! And it is for the reason I am doing this, Ozpin shot back. We both know that the war was on us, not them. We came to their home and destroyed it, not them. They had every right to fight back, and if it wasn't for the fact that they may have not known where we came from, we could be facing an invasion right now. Ozpin stood and turned to look out the window. Besides, you very well know what is coming, Glinda, and if we are going to come through that storm relatively damage-free, then we need help from outside ourselves. Glinda stepped back, sufficiently pacified. It was quiet for a while before Ozpin spoke again. Did you see it in his eyes? Glinda spoke. See what? She asked. He was scared. Scared? Scared of what? Glinda was utterly confused now. Bonds. He was scared of letting people in. That war probably caused more damage to them than it did us, and not just in material losses. Underneath that calm and collected shinobi is a scared boy, afraid of making friends because something happened to them in that war. He doesn't want to be hurt like that again, so avoids making contact with others, Ospen explained quietly. Glinda was silent. She was recollecting her entire view of the resident shinobi. Despite appearances, he was only 18. Only just an adult in the eyes of their government. Perhaps not theirs, though. If the rumors were true, then they began training their soldiers at the age of 6. Too young, in many's opinion. Naruto leaned against the wall at the back of the amphitheater as he idly listened to Osman's speech to the rest of the students. They were all roughly 17 in age, a year younger than him. However, he had spotted a girl in a red cloak that appeared to be younger than the rest. He would hazard a guess at the fact that she was late arrival. He wasn't ignorant of the stares that he got, or the whispers that he could hear. He expertly ignored them, however. He was used to much worse than whispers from teenagers who had yet to see blood, let alone death. He caught the tail end of the speech and the subsequent instruction from Glinda explaining the fact they would be sleeping in the hall tonight, and he sighed in annoyance. He would probably sleep in the rafters and avoid the lot of them. It would be the easiest solution, and so he did, out of sight and out of mind. From his position, he had the perfect view of the entire hall, but from his position in the shadows, none of the students below could see him. Perfect! For about 20 minutes he watched the children mill about and prepare for bed. There were people writing home and others trying to impress the opposite sex by flexing their muscles or bodies. Naruto scoffed. Children! Naruto lamented the fact that he was here, and not for the first time, but he had no choice in the matter. He could at least take a comfort in the fact that he wouldn't be killed in his sleep. Austin was making it more bearable by giving him as much freedom as he could, but that was but a drop in the ocean. Eventually, one by one, the lights went out and the students went to sleep. Naruto was about to follow them into dreamland when he noticed a black-haired girl with a bow light a few candles and begin reading. Naruto smirked slightly when her bow twitched in annoyance when two girls approached, a yellow-haired one dragging the smaller black and red-haired one. A faunus, then. Interesting. Of course he knew about faunas. He had read about them on the trip over and seen a few on his incursions to Vale itself. He watched in amusement as the two stumbled around their words, in turn creating a rather large amount of chaos. This drew the attention of some unsavory individuals, which was shown when a girl with white hair and a nightgown approached. She also seemed rather peeved off. It was the prominent white colored that caused Naruto to recognize her. Shnee, he almost snarled. They were the entire reason they were in this mess in the first place. After a rather lucrative amount of dubious interrogation techniques. The general consensus was the fact that Remnant was running low on dust. It was for the reason that the biggest dust company would worry: no more dust, no more business. And so, because they were so bloody rich, they paid for an expedition to see if there were other land masses in the world. Obviously, they found one: the elemental nations. They immediately began prospecting for dust and using the nearby inhabitants as manual labor to do so, and killing those that refused to do so. This, of course, brought the attention of the villages in Daimyo. The rest is history. So caught up in his rather murderous thoughts, he had missed the tail end of the conversation and were now breaking up to go to sleep. Sighing in annoyance, he seemed to be doing that a lot lately. He watched as the black-haired girl blew out the candles, wiping the only source of light from the room. Deciding to follow the general consensus of the room, he lay back on the beam he was perched on and closed his eyes. End of chapter 2.